Hello everyone, welcome to the daily news analysis of NEXT IAS. This is Varun. Today we will discuss 5 important articles from 2 newspapers, The Hindu and Indian Express. First section will be regarding our prelims examination, that is explained, in which first article we will read about PM's message. Then further we will discuss about US-China trade deal. After that further we will discuss about shipping industry emission, and then another article which has come regarding germanium import. Further in our main section we will discuss about decoded, that is educational landscape. So for first article, that is about PM's message, the discussion will mostly around the what PM has given message in context of India-Pakistan relation. Then about US-China trade deal, it has happened yesterday, and in that context we need to understand how it will impact global world order as well as India. Further, about shipping industry emission, International Maritime Organization and countries are trying to have a deal so that they can reduce emission from the shipping industry emerging. Further, about germanium import, as India relies on China for import of germanium, so for that context we need to understand about this particular topic and element. After that, in educational landscape, there is again the issue about understanding how freedom is being reduced in universities, that what article is saying. In that context, let us understand about the higher education system. Now let us start with our first article, that is PM's message. So about the first article, we can see the headline of the newspaper is India would not bend to Pak nuclear blackmail. That is the headline which is being in one of the newspaper, and it is said by our Honorable Prime Minister. So importance of this article is basically about GS2 paper, that is international relations, and specifically to the India and its neighborhood. So let us try to understand what Prime Minister has given message, what are its implications, and what should be the further approach. So some of the major points and major themes on which Prime Minister has focused in his special message to the nation. So first is on establishing peace. The Prime Minister has quoted, "This is definitely not a time for war," as from time to time Prime Minister always say this is not an era of war. Even in the Russia-Ukraine dispute context also this statement was there. He further reiterated that this is definitely not an era of war, but it is not a time for terrorism either. So we should differentiate between two things, the war and terrorism. That's why even this is not an era of war, but one cannot in the lieu of that promote or preach terrorism. That's what the message is. Further, the way to peace goes via the exercise of strength, as well as India need to be strong to live in peace. So for peace and security in any region, for any country, this is one of the most basic thing, that is strength is required. If you are weak, everybody will always try to destabilize the country, destabilize the region. That's why strength is necessary. Exercise its strength to achieve it, and sometimes also it is not only your strength, but you also need to give some message through by showing some actions, like earlier we have Balakot air strike, surgical strikes, that send a message to the world that India does not only have strength, but through its action India will always take some preemptive actions to protect its territory, to protect its people. So that's the message. Beside that, he also emphasized on zero tolerance of terrorism. India always maintain that there is no good terrorism, no bad terrorism, and there should be zero tolerance against any form of terrorism. That was also the message. This is basically on peace, that how peace in the region can be promoted. Further, Prime Minister has also given message on make in India weapons. So in this current scenario, India has using a lot of weaponry also. In those some of are specially designed and made in India. So for that also government is trying to promote this thing, because as we have seen in Russia-Ukraine context or Israel-Hamas context, reliance on self is very important in the context of weapon also. Like PM has said that made in India arms and armaments are very important and crucial for such scenario. Beside it, India has also displayed a very good capability in deserts and mountains due to the availability of these specific weapons and equipments. It has the operation has also established credibility of made in India weapon also, and it was also proven to the world that made in India weapons are also equally capable as it is being claimed by Western countries. So that's why this message also has included about the made in India weapons. Further, Prime Minister has also talked about ceasefire. So day before yesterday, ceasefire was announced between India and Pakistan, but Prime Minister has also talked about this in his special message that Pakistan, due to the seeing destruction of terror camps and India's ability to take the operations to their logical end, begged for ceasefire. So it is a Pakistan who has approached India for ceasefire, because as Pakistan was thinking that they will do whatever they want to do in the context of Kashmir or in the context of terror, but due to the befitting reply of India's armed forces, they were forced to beg for the ceasefire. Beside that, Pakistan has also given assurances that they would act on terror and desist from further attacks, and then only India was ready to negotiate for ceasefire deal. Further, Prime Minister has also said that cessation of hostilities at the moment between India should be seen only as a pause. So the message is India should not completely blindfoldly rely on whatever Pakistan is saying. The ceasefire is only temporary. We have to wait and watch. We don't know how the scenario can emerge. Pakistan from many times they say that they will support things, but they get backtracked. That's why in the context of India-Pakistan relation, we have to be wary whether Pakistan is upholding whatever the terms they are ready and negotiated during the ceasefire. That's why we need to understand this is just a temporary pause. Further, Prime Minister has said that new parameters and new normal has been set up in the India-Pakistan relations, especially in the wake of terror attacks. So Operation Sindoor, which was carried out, it has created a new benchmark against terrorism. Beside this, the Prime Minister has also said that if there is a terrorist attack on India, what will happen? India will definitely give a befitting reply. These all things are very important for us to understand. Whenever there is a question in UPSC examination, you can use these dimensions. For example, if the question is on India-Pakistan relation, the dimension of terror and terrorism should always be put by you. And in that context, you can have multiple points. Like multiple points, for example, you can quote about the nature of strikes which India is doing, the nuclear bluff which was taken out, beside it weapons used by India, especially in the context of made in India. Then also the Indus Water Treaty which was put on hold. All these dimensions you should always write. Beside it, in the dimension of internal security, if the question is on terrorism, in that aspect also we can make a multi-dimensional answer using these context and using these dimensions. Again, weapon used by India, the preemptive exercises, the capability of armed forces, beside it the diplomacy which India is also proactively engaging with other power, so that it should not give a negative image in the world scenario. So all these things has been discussed, and in this way you should try to understand this. This is sometimes what will happen, aspirants will think this is a political news. Yes, the context is political, but what is the relevance of this in UPSC examination, we need to understand, and that is very important for us. Besides it, Prime Minister has said that we will take strict action at every place from where the roots of terrorism emerge. So this is giving a clear message that in the neighborhood, in the context of terrorism, peace should be prioritized, safety of people will be prioritized. India will not tolerate any nuclear blackmail again, because Pakistan from many times always create a hype around nuclear weapon, that there is going to be a nuclear war. So India has, due to its proactive strikes, what they have done, they have been able to overcome the nuclear bluff being put by Pakistan. Besides it, India will not differentiate between government sponsoring terrorism and the masterminds of terrorism. So, what has happened in this particular, after the Operation Sindoor, various terrorists were being killed by Indian armed forces, and their bodies were being, many Pakistani armed forces officers bid farewell to their bodies, and that showed that there was nexus between the state and the terrorists. So, India said that they will not tolerate this also, that some states are engaged in sponsoring terrorism. In that context, this message is very important, because many times what will happen, the states say that these terrorists are not part of our state government, or not part, we are not backing them. In that context, this is very important. There is strong evidence of state sponsored terrorism from Pakistan itself due to various actions being done by their officers or various activities they do. Then at last, the Prime Minister has given a very strong message: talks and terror cannot go together. This message from time to time India always put between India and Pakistan relation. Terror and trade cannot go together. Water and blood cannot go together. So, that these three are very important thing. Talks and terror cannot go together. So, in context of India-Pakistan relation, Pakistan always try to have a relationship with India, and from the time to time they have a policy, they have a principle to cut India thousands times and let them bleed. That is their policy, which needs to be completely eliminated only by these intentions, that talks and terror should not go. Then there is another issue: terror and trade cannot go together. So, what happens, many times they do such type of terror strikes, and again they need or they want that India should consider these things, they should consider that trade should go on. But this is not a way to go forward in any relationship. Someone is backstabbing, and one country cannot let other to do this. Beside it, water and blood, that is in the context of Indus Water Treaty, that treaty was done in a very good harmony, but the time is now not right. The manner in which Pakistan is taking it for granted is not a good thing. So, these are the basic things which Prime Minister has said in his special speech, and a UPSC aspirant can utilize these quotations, these important points in the context of examination. Let us try to understand which type of question can be framed in this particular context in prelims examination. So, the question is: with reference to Operation Sindoor carried out by the Indian Air Force in 2025, consider the following statements. It was launched in retaliation to a terrorist attack in Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir. The operation targeted only terrorist camps located in POK. Unlike Operation Bandar, India also targeted the terrorist infrastructure inside Pakistan territory. Which of the statements given is or are correct? Despite this question will be looking trivial right now, but after 1 year when you are appearing for next prelims examination, this question is, the context of question will be like it will be clouded by your hindsight or by your saliency bias. That's why it is important to practice such type of question also, and you never know UPSC, because UPSC can ask any type of question also. So, this is our humble request, kindly mark your answer in our comment section for this particular question, your PS will review. Our next topic is about US-China trade deal. So, the backdrop of this topic is US and China have reached a trade deal in Geneva after the 2-day long trade talks between the two countries. This particular topic is important for our GS2 paper, that is international relation. Beside it, it is also important for GS3 paper, that is economy section. So, global economy will also benefit due to this particular trade deal. Now, let us try to understand what the news is and what its implication on global world order, further what its implication on India. So, the news headline says that a substantial agreement was reached, and that agreement led to de-escalation of the trade war. So, as 1 or 2 months back, what has happened, US President Donald Trump has announced various measures, especially he raised the tariffs of goods which being imported from China, and in that context a cold trade war was bring up between China and US. Due to that, China retaliated and they also imposed various tariffs on the goods emerging from US. Even they have restricted export of some of the goods or rare earth elements which are monopoly right now by China in production and exports. But US also need these things. In that context, this agreement has led to the cooling off of that particular trade war and de-escalated it. Right now, US has agreed in principle to reduce tariffs from 145% to 80%. And also it is expecting that China will also provide some concessions. Economists believe that anything less than 50% tariff threshold is necessary to restore trade to pre-conflict level. Here we can see in this diagram, which has been taken from one of the newspaper, it shows that how in January 2018 there was 0% tariffs, but it has reached to above 100% on various goods that is being exported and imported between China and US. So that's how it has escalated. Beside it, Chinese has also ready to provide some concessions which are expected, like easing of export restriction, especially on rare earth elements, because of the dependency of US on those things. Especially they are important for electronics goods also, that's why. Then US will also, and its firms, the firms which are originated or which are operating in US, they will get more access to market in China. Then there is also potential reform in state subsidies, intellectual property enforcement and data regulation. So these are the some of the things. Beside it, US-China trade deal, why both sides are keen to break the stalemate. So let us understand from the point of view of United States. So what will happen, as US was facing some economic challenges like inflation control, supply chain problems, political compulsions are also there. So in economic inflation, like retail inflation in US rose to about 3%, 3.5% it was. Due to the imposition of such tariffs, what happened? The imports which were coming from China, those started costing more to the consumers in China, and that's why inflation increased. Even Goldman Sachs has predicted that it could double also. In that context, it was necessary that such type of deals should be negotiated. Besides it, there were issue of supply chain, because increase in the tariffs also led to disruption in supply chain. The supply chain started shifting from China to other countries, and that is also a problem, because the low cost goods will also cost more, and US ports saw import decline. The US, which has imposed these tariffs, ultimately led to cost their ports also. Retailers warned of inventory shortages, that has also happened. Inventory was not there, almost whatever they have earlier imported, only due to that the things were present. Then there were some political compulsions, like there is midterm elections in 2026 and voters are not happy, consumers are not happy, and that's why President Donald Trump was forced to rethink about these things also. Besides it, limited fiscal options is also available to provide subsidy on such things, and hence US and China sat on a table to renegotiate some deal so that things can become a win-win situation for both countries. Now let us see what these things has led to China to rethink about these issues. So in China, manufacturing slowdown was happening, like factory output report which comes every month, it showed that factory production is also decreasing, manufacturing is decreasing, it is impacted due to the tariffs. Beside it, they have also policy leverage, like fiscal and monetary stimulus are being implemented, but it works up to certain limit. It is not an endless resource which China can use. So they need also something, and that's why they also came and sat on the table to renegotiate the terms. Now let us try to understand what will be its impact on global world. So this shows that WTO relevance is fading away. Why? Because countries now engaging in bilateral negotiation rather utilizing multilateral forums like WTO to come out to a solution, and that's why its relevance is fading. Besides it, middle powers like European Union, India, they find more room to assert independent trade policy. Why? Again, same thing is happening as major players, major economic players are negotiating separately from the WTO, then middle players will also say that if you are doing that, we will also be going that particular route. There is also a stabilization of global trade sentiment. These de-escalation reduce uncertainty in global trade flow. So what happened yesterday due to this news and also due to the ceasefire, India's important indices Sensex and Nifty were up by 4%. So that's the sentiment which is being shown by investors also, which is shown by other countries. Besides it, global financial markets may respond positively. That's what we have just seen in the context of India. There is also possibility of revival of global supply chain, especially because of resumption of US-China trade. So global trade will increase, and that would require a lot of logistics, lot of shipping industry. So all these will lead to revival of global supply chain. Like also it will help to engage into various countries. Someone will be manufacturing, someone will be assembly, other will be designing, like designed in California, manufactured in China and assembled in India. So it will again create a supply chain, global supply chain. It will also help multinational corporations especially to replan their logistics, inventory and procurement with more certainty, and then more investment will come, that will create further jobs, that will lead to the cool down of inflation, that will increase economic growth, it will create employment opportunities. So overall economy will benefit, complete global economy, not a particular two countries. Besides it, there will also be impact on global inflation pressure, as we have discussed that this will create certainty. So what will happen? Inventories will be built up, more R&D will happen, more manufacturing will happen, production will happen, and consumers will get low cost good due to the again rebuilding of supply chain. So imports in countries like US and other, it will again be relatively lower, and that will reduce inflation pressure again. Beside it, it will risk increased Chinese overcapacity. So this is the one of the important problem which global world order right now is facing, especially in economic arena, that China has a lot of capacity to produce, and due to their overcapacity they start dumping goods in a manner that it led to other countries domestic manufacturers to lose competitive edge, and where they start losing jobs, unemployment increases, and that's why such type of protectionist measures being taken by the countries in context of China's overcapacity, China's overproduction capacity this led to. Besides it, emerging market will also face competition and stress, as we are discussing that their competitiveness is less, because in China what happens, state is also providing subsidy and they are making manufacturing giants which has advantage of economies of scale. So their goods become so much cheaper, including the subsidies, that they start dumping it in other economies. Beside it, it will also lead to the strategic realignments, like temporary deal may dampen the momentum of the China plus one, which was being promoted as an alternative in the context of these trade war or protectionist measures being taken by the two countries. It may also lead to capital reflow back to China, as this will again create sentiment among the investors and give them confidence that China will be the manufacturing hub of the world, and that's why various type of investment will again reflow back to the China. But there are some challenges also. Even this deal is being renegotiated, this deal is being accepted, but there are some challenges like structural trade tensions. So the deal is, first thing, it is temporary. Beside it, various issues like IPR theft. So from time to time US accused China about IPR theft also, like they were accusing them in the context of smartphone manufacturing, in the context of AI also. So that issue is also there, and if these trusts will not be stabilized, what will happen? There is a chance that the two countries will further engage in protectionist measure and they will take some extreme steps. Beside, there is issue of tech transfer, subsidies issue as being provided by the Chinese government, then cyber security concerns. Many times what happens, Chinese utilize some non-state actors to do cyber attacks or cyber warfare to steal IPRs, and that will again create distrust and it will lead to that this trade deal will not be taken up. Further, because there are various other issues, like even in Europe there is issues of migration, even there are Donald Trump, since he has become president, many a times has withdrawn from various other treaties like Paris Agreement. So these things will again lead to China to rethink about the trade deal, and also the uncertainty of the President Donald Trump creates many a time a problem that no one trusts about his instincts, that after some months or some days he may again backtrack what he has said, and that will lead to the collapse of the deal. So these are challenges especially. Now what its implication will be on India? So a UPSC aspirant should always understand its implication in the context of India. In mains examination, if there is a question, it will be framed on particularly this parameter. So there are some opportunities for India also, like sectoral gains, especially in pharmaceutical APIs, gems and jewelry, organic chemicals, engineering goods, IT enabled services. These sectors are less exposed to US China trade flow shifts. In these sectors already India has a good engagement in global supply chain. India is an active player in these arena. So that's why these are not that much impacted, and further they will benefit. Beside it, India can also target some niche areas, and those areas which are uncontested by US China trade, like tourism sector is there, in that particular area, education sector is there. Here India can focus and they can benefit. Beside it also microprocessor and chip manufacturing, here again India can collaborate with US and further get some benefit. There will be reduced Chinese dumping in short term. So due to this trade deal, China will have to recalibrate some of its strategies regarding subsidies they are providing, and that's why the cost of its exports which they are doing, like in steel, it will increase, and that will lead to reduction in Chinese dumping. But there are some challenges for India also. Let us try to understand which type of challenge can be. Reversal of investment diversion. So what will happen? Countries had to relocate to India, Vietnam or Mexico during trade war. Now they will start thinking that as this trade war is subsidized and China has some competitive advantage, like they provide subsidies, they have better infrastructure, they have good logistics, they have forward backward linkage. So these issues, and even they have better access to some of the markets even like US. So they may return to China, and that will again create problem for India. There is also limited addressal of core issue. So the core issue has not been resolved, like IPR violation, subsidies, trade imbalance. These are not resolved. Only few things has been discussed. Only few things regarding the tariffs will be reduced. Not these issues still is on the table. So that's why it will again create problem. Besides it, increased competition between US and China will lead into the high value sectors, where electronics, machinery, and these are still in nascent stage in Indian economy. So manufacturing of these will increase, and that may lead to harm of these particular sectors where India still has that not much advantage. Here we can see this, that the investment, as we were talking, it is becoming uncertain. Sometimes it is going down, sometimes it is increasing. So, in investment there will be more uncertainty. Investors will not feel confident if clear roadmap is not there in particular context. Now, let us try to understand some of the strategic implications which will happen. So, there is need for domestic competitiveness. So, India should follow the path of, which path? The path of making its own industry competitive, like it must enhance logistics, infrastructure and policy stability. Besides it, trade policy realignment should also be thought out. Some new markets, some new areas should also be explored. Not India should depend on these markets, but also go further, like FTAs with EU, renegotiation of FTA with ASEAN, proactive Indo-Pacific partners like also Indo-Africa. So, that will help India to diversify itself and do not only depend on such type of issues where anytime the trade protection measures taken by few countries will lead to either collapse or either some extreme form of black swan event. Beside it, India always should have a vision for long term supply chain, being part of long supply chain, global supply chain, that is very important and crucial for the long term. India should position itself as a stable rule based economy for long term supply chain realignment. This should be the way forward or path ahead for the India in particular context. Now, through a practice question, let us try to understand which type of question can be asked on this particular topic in prelims examination. Consider the following statement related to the economic concepts involved in the recent US-China trade deal. The US-China trade deal is expected to lower tariffs, which could result in decrease in cost push inflation in the US economy. Comparative advantage suggests that countries should not trade if they are facing trade barriers, as they have no incentive to specialize in efficient production. Trade diversion occurs when countries shift import to less efficient but tariff free nations, potentially affecting countries like India, which benefited during the trade war. The balance of trade refers to the overall volume of imports and export, but does not influence the economic relation between trading countries. Which of the following statements given above are correct? So, from this question we can understand that the question on these type of topics mostly will be regarding conceptual question, like cost push inflation is there, how tariff barriers will impact, how trade diversion will happen, and how imports and exports overall their trend will be. So, these type of concepts can be asked or can be tested in the prelims examination. So, this is our humble request, kindly mark your answer in the comment section and your PS will review. Now, we will be discussing a next topic which is regarding the shipping industry, that shipping industry is tackling emission, okay, and how this shipping industry emission will be tackled. There has been 83rd session of Marine Environment Protection Committee, and the relevance of this topic in GS3 paper environmental pollution, that is the relevance, but this topic can also be asked in prelims examination in the environment section about the IMO, that is maritime organization, about the various conventions like London Convention is there. So, these things also can be asked as a factual thing or a statement based thing. Now, let us try to understand about the news and then further how these things are important for prelims as well as mains examination in UPSC. So, 83rd session of Marine Environment Protection Committee has been done. So, this has happened in IMO headquarters in London, and this is particularly important because in this meeting there was a decision taken by the member countries, and that countries voted in favor of accepting Singapore's hybrid model, and which was based on India's proposal as the IMO net zero framework. So, IMO has been able to propose a net zero framework, and initially it was proposed by India, but it was modified by Singapore, and the final thing was adopted by a vote, which will make international shipping the first global industry to adopt a mandatory emission levy framework. So, what will happen if there is an emission by the shipping industry, there will be some levy will be put on, and this is agreed by in principle member countries. Then India had also proposed a bridging mechanism. That what has happened, initially India has proposed a bridging mechanism which would target only under compliant means the ships which are not properly following the rules and regulation being set up or the standards being set up, while rewarding those using zero or near zero net jet fuels. So, it will be act as a bridge. If you are polluting, you will be penalized. If you are following the standards, you will be rewarded. That is what India proposed, and it has been modified by Singapore, and then they have reached to this net zero framework. Beside it, Singapore has said that the provision should involve a greenhouse gas fuel standard. So, that is the standard which will be set up, and a tiered system will be followed to reward surplus emission units. If anyone has been able, for example, some shipping fleet or some country and their shipping fleet is able to reduce or cut emissions below the standard also, they will be having some surplus, and that should be rewarded. Beside it, if there is more emission, then other countries will be required to purchase of remedial units for underperformance. It means that if you are more emitting, then you will also need, you will not only be penalized, you are going to purchase the surplus from those countries who are performing better. So, that will create incentive for countries, for shipping industry to perform better and earn some credits which are surplus, and they can trade those to those who are not performing good, and that will lead to net zero. For example, there is some surplus, there is some shipping industry or some countries which are not performing, and that will lead to net zero. This is how this framework will. Now, how the article says how India will benefit. So, according to UNCTAD, what will happen, impact of this market based measure, that is MBM, this market based measure on India's maritime logistic cost will be modest in near term. So, right now India will not that much be impacted, because this will lead to increase in the cost. The shipping industry will need to reconfigure the technology which they are using, the fuels which they are using. They need to raise their standards so that emissions should be minimum. In that context, it will be around 5% to 7.3% was they say on imports, and around 5.9% to 8% on exports by 2030. That is being predicted by UNCTAD in context of India. Also, there is a fact about India that it only operates 236 ships with 5,000 gross tonnage, and only out of that 135 is involved in international voyage. So, India's shipping fleet, especially in this arena, is not that much big. That is why India will not be impacted very much. But MBM framework has some potential to benefit India. How? It will make India a global hub for clean energy export, because various industries like Adani Green and others are planning to invest hugely on green hydrogen, and that can act as a fuel for this shipping industry, and India can export those fuels for the industries, and that will help India to become a global hub for clean energy exports. Now, why this green shipping matters? Because currently the emission from this sector is about 1 billion ton, that is being said in the article. So, it is a very huge emission, and it is projected to increase. There have been two scenarios being projected, 50% by 2050 minimum, this is minimum increase which is being projected, and maximum it can rise to 250% if there is no policy or no regulation regarding this sector. Then it may also reach to 250% increase, because right now a lot of, for example, in the context of India, 90% of its trade by volume is being done through sea routes, So imports or export by volume, we are not saying by value. So by volume 90% is being done through 3 routes, that is through shipping, and that's why this industry will become more larger and will start increasing more emission. So for that, this green shipping is very important to reduce the emission, and that is very important. Then for prelims examination, aspirants should also focus on the organizations involved. For example, here International Maritime Organization is important. So it is basically a specialized agency of the UN. One should always remember this fact. There are various specialized agencies of the UN and it is one of them. So in prelims examination, the statement can be like whether this is a specialized agency of UN or not. It is global standard setting authority for what? Safety, security and environmental protection of international shipping, and its main role is to create a regulatory framework for what? Shipping industry, which should be fair and effective, universally adopted and universally implemented. Beside it, its membership, how much members and who are the members? Around 176 member states presently as per the latest data. There is 3 associate members also. Beside, there are 66 international governmental organizations that have observer status also. So this is some of the fact. There are 89 international NGOs which have consultative status. So these are the facts which can be asked by the UPSC. Then IMO has assembly also. It is highest governing body of IMO, which is responsible for approving the work program and budget. Besides it, this assembly consists of all IMO member states and meets once every 2 years. So this is important fact that it is not meeting annually but biannually. It is also council, and basically the council acts as executive organ. So what has happened? Assembly is policy formulation. Assembly focus on policy, programs, rules, and those rules, regulation, policies are being implemented through council, which is executive body of the IMO. It is made up of basically 40 member states and they are elected by the assembly itself for 2 years term. So when the assembly meet, they will propose some policy, program, formulate things, and then also they will simultaneously elect a council, and that council will be for 2 years again responsible for execution of those things. Then there is again Maritime Environment Protection Committee, and this committee addresses what? Environmental issues under the IMO's remit. Whatever the environmental issues coming under IMO, they will be like control and prevention of ship source, pollution covered by MARPOL treaty. We will understand what is something facts about MARPOL treaty also in further slides, like oil, chemicals carried in bulk, garbage and emission from ships, pollutant, greenhouse gases, all these things are being taken care by this Marine Environment Protection Committee. Now various initiatives have been taken by IMO to control pollution by shipping industry, like what has happened in greenhouse gas strategy in 2018 come, and it was also again updated in 2023. Besides that, IMO ensures that there should be mandatory recording and reporting of fuel oil consumption, how much fuel oil is being consumed by which particular country and their shipping industry, that should also be reported. Beside it, in 2018 and 13, IMO has fixed a target for reducing carbon intensity. And what is carbon intensity? That is important fact, CO2 emissions per transport work. In this context, this is the carbon intensity. So one has to understand this also. What were the targets? By 2030, it should be reduced by 40%. By 2040, it should be reduced by 70%, and by 2050, net zero should be achieved. That was the plan which was proposed by IMO. Further, we have said earlier that we will be discussing about some of the conventions like MARPOL Convention, London Convention. So MARPOL Convention is basically international convention for the prevention of pollution from ships, and its aim is to prevent and minimize pollution from ships, both from accidental and operational sources. Accidental, for example, sometimes what happens, ships collide or there is some accident and a lot of oil is spilled in the sea. So that also taken consideration under this MARPOL Convention. and it was adopted in 1973, that is the fact. Beside it, two things are also related to this thing. Energy efficiency design index is also there, which is part of MARPOL convention, and it is basically performance based regulation. It provides regulation basis of the performance what the other industry is doing. Then there is SIP, energy efficiency management plan, which we call SIMP. This is also part of this MARPOL convention, and it is again SIP specific plan. Earlier it was performance based, this EEDIE is performance based, whereas SIMP is SIP specific plans, which lays down how a vessel will improve its energy efficiency. So that's what MARPOL convention is about. Now there is another convention, that is London Protocol. It is again managed by IMO, and its aim is to prevent marine pollution by controlling dumping of waste. For example, a ship is going on and ship is dumping, or what can happen, one country is producing some waste, either biological, chemical or something, and they start dumping it into sea. So who is going to take care of that thing? For that this London Protocol is there to regulate these things, also to create something which will restrict these problems, and that is why the protocol restricts all dumping except for a permitted list of materials. And for those also there is a requirement of special permits, those on the grey list. So this is about this shipping industry and its regulation. Now through a practice question, let us try to understand which type of question can come into the prelims examination. That will give you idea that on which line to prepare this particular topic. With reference to IMO, consider the following statement. IMO Council is the highest governing body of IMO and meets once every 2 years. Marine Environment Protection Committee is responsible for addressing air pollution and greenhouse gas emission from ships. Energy Efficiency Design Index is an initiative under the London Protocol for reducing emission from ships. Which of the statement above is are correct? So this is our humble request, kindly mark your answer and your PS will review. Our next topic is about germanium import. So this topic has come into the backdrop. India engaged with China on germanium export restrictions. So germanium is an important element and India is heavily dependent on import. In this context, this article has come into the newspaper. Its relevance in prelims examination, we know they can ask about germanium, but in mains examination this itself also can be asked in GS3 paper, especially in the mineral section. Now first let us try to understand what the news says and then further about germanium. So what has happened? India is engaging with Chinese government. For what? To navigate export restriction on germanium. So Chinese government in recent times has put some restriction on the export of some of rare earth elements as well as germanium. We have to understand that germanium is not in the list of rare earth element. It is a separate element. We will further learn about this element. Let us try to understand what the news says first. Export restriction has caused some frictions in the electronics manufacturing. As germanium has application in electronic industry, that's why it is causing a problem for India's domestic manufacturing industry. Germanium is basically a chemical element and its symbol is Ge and its atomic number is 32. So these are very basic facts related to germanium. It is also a metalloid. So we have to understand that it is not a metal, rather it is a metalloid. And what is metalloid? That is, its properties lies between metals and not metals. So it has some property which is related to metals and some properties which is related to non-metals, and that's why it is metalloid, and that's why it has some exceptional behavior, and that's why it has some very important and niche application in electronic industry. Now let us try to understand what are the application of germanium. So it is being utilized in electronics industry, optics also. Optics is right now getting a lot of further improvement. It is being used in communication also, and that's why it requires some niche technology. So germanium is a semiconductor and it is used as transistor, diodes and rectifiers, and that's why it is very crucial for electronic industry, because electronic industry is heavily dependent on semiconductor. Beside it, germanium dioxide, as it has high refractive index, those elements or those compounds which have high refractive index are very good for particularly application in optical industry. It is used for lenses, cameras, microscopes, to especially in the electron microscope also it gets particular application, as well as optical fibers. And optical fibers, we know they are being utilized for communication, especially fiber, 5G technology, 4G technology depends on this optical fiber. Besides it, thermal imaging cameras which are used in space work especially. So, germanium is that's why very crucial element. Beside it, it is also has application in solar cell and panels. It has application in medical application. It has also getting a lot of importance in R&D, like various research instruments need germanium. Then military application is also there, like night vision instruments because of this thermal imaging cameras. Also firefighting equipments are being made through, and also it sometimes germanium provides some further other properties which are being used in this firefighting equipment. There are some other equipments like plastic manufacturing, there is rewritable DVDs, and it also acts as a catalyst. So, these all properties make germanium very unique and very important element, and India does not have production, that is why India is heavily dependent on import of germanium. Now, let us try to understand where germanium is basically found. So, its ore are rare. Now, the word rare is there, but it does not mean it is rare earth element, that is a different thing. Most germanium is a byproduct of what? Zinc production and from coal fly ash. The ash coal we burned, after that the fly ash which is remaining, that also has element of germanium. Beside it, zinc production, when a smelting of zinc is done, that is its ore is being refined, the byproduct also contains germanium. China produces around 60% of world germanium, and that is why it has monopoly. And as there is a report by European Industry Association, Critical Raw Material Alliance, and they says that rest is coming from Canada, Finland, Russia and United States. So, India does not have overall production. It is completely reliant on imports for germanium. Beside it, basically the suppliers are from UAE, and that is why the global supply chain regarding germanium is complicated for India, and which inflate cost for Indian importers, as China is producing, but that is going first to UAE and then coming back. We can see China is here, India is here and UAE is here. So, first it will go here and then it will come back, and that will increase the cost. But one thing is always you have to remember as a fact that it is not a rare earth element, it is a metalloid, not a metal also, that is because of the nature of its semiconductor property. It has property of both metal as well as non-metal, and rare earth elements are group of 17 elements which include like scandiametrium are there, which has also some specific property, but germanium is not one of them, but still it is rare. Why? Because of not very abundant in earth crust. It is not abundant, that is why it is becoming rare, not because it is part of rare earth element, which are 17. Now, through a practice question, let us try to understand how you should tackle such type of topics. With reference to germanium, consider the following statement. Germanium is classified as a rare earth element. It is used in semiconductors, optical instruments, military devices. India is self-sufficient in germanium production due to large reserves found in northeastern coal mine. Which of the following statements are correct or incorrect? We are saying here asking about incorrect. That is how UPSC sometimes also give, that they are sometimes asking incorrect, and many times aspirants do not look on this aspect also and they mark wrong answer. So, this is our humble request, kindly mark your answer in our comment section and your PS will review. Now, our next topic is about educational landscape. This topic we will discuss mostly from the mains examination perspective. There will be a further explained discussion, and we will try to look why this particular editorial has come into the newspaper. This has come into the Hindu newspaper, and its backdrop is educational landscape is starting to shift in India. That is what the author or the person who has written the article is saying. Its relevance in GS2 paper, especially in social justice, where education sector plays an important role. Now, let us try to understand first through a PYQ that which type of question already has been asked by UPSC in this particular topic. National Education Policy 2020 is in conformity with the Sustainable Development Goal 4. It intends to restructure and reorient education system in India. Critically examine the statement. So whenever there is something new regarding policy formulation in some sectors come, UPSC always asks the question. Now let us try to understand what first the author says, what are the author's viewpoint, and what should be the way forward. This is how we will cover this topic, and you should have a structured approach regarding these type of topics. That first you should understand which type of challenges, what is its impact, and then what should be the way forward. So the author is saying that education has historically been recorded as a cornerstone of societal advancement. Why? Because it is a realm of critical thinking. Due to the education, people are able to have critical thinking. They have able to a spirit of free inquiry, and pursuit of knowledge is also being flourished only due to the education. Higher education has also cultivated intellectual independence. It nurtured dissent and inspired progress. So for the progress, it is also always being said that progress can only be achieved if there is free spirit, free inquiry. Then the humans can only progress. Otherwise, what already has been done, it will only be repeated, and the society will become static. Further, it will start degrading, like what has happened during the dark ages in Europe. Same thing has happened. The spirit of inquiry, the critical thinking was not promoted. So that's what the author is trying to say. Beside it, educational landscape, the author is saying in context of India is going to profound change and also discerning shift. Now, how the change is happening, some of the features which has been highlighted by the author, let us see. There is disquieting development in decline of unyielding centralization of academic curricula. So curricula is being centralized. Earlier, mostly universities, colleges were given autonomy in this arena, but it is right now being centralized. What the author is saying. In the past, what was happening, universities enjoyed considerable autonomy to craft syllabus as per their students' requirement, as per the future or the course of the economy or society which is going on. So that is being curtailed right now. Besides, its centralized agency like UGC is there, NEP is there. These are being promoted by government to take over on the curricula which is being set up by the university itself. Then the role of UGC is also being moving towards centralization. Like originally it was basically focused on to coordinate academic standards, but it has become instrument of control. It dictates appointments, interferes in administration and shapes curricula. These are the domain which was earlier thought to be being independent, autonomous for the colleges and universities, but these are also being interfered. Under the guise of regulation, what UGC is doing, eroded the autonomy of Indian universities. This is being said by the author. Then an institution that is stripped of autonomy, what will happen? Its faculty selection, research direction and protection of dissent will cease, and that will lead to erosion of critical thinking, spirit of learning. Besides, these things will have some impact also, like it will produce compliant drones. Compliant drones means we just mindlessly blindly follow something. Regiment's intellectual discourse will happen only. Marginalize alternative perspective. If there is something different view, there is something deviant, it will be marginalized. That is what the impact will be. Beside it, intellectual ecosystem will become monolithic. There will be no diversity. Diversity will be curtailed. Radical innovation will not be promoted. It will also lead to discouragement of interrogation of dominant narratives. For example, if there is a narrative in the society about caste system, about religion, or even about some technological development like artificial intelligence, what will be the impact of artificial intelligence on youth, what will be impact of artificial intelligence on children, what will be impact of social media. These are the dominant narratives which require critical thinking, which require every type and every dimensional analysis. but this will be discouraged due to these things what the author is saying. Universities remain compliant rather confrontational. Universities should be a space which should not only confirm what is being promoted, but also bring out various lacunas in the policy, bring out various problems which is being faced by the society, and that's why they will only become compliant rather confrontational. They will also suppress critical perspectives. If there is something which is against government or which is against the institution established, it will be a problematic for those institutions, and that will be suppressed. That is what the author is saying. There is also resurgence of reactionary politics. So whatever the politics is going on, these suppression will lead to reaction, and that will also happen. Beside it, it will also impact teachers and faculties. How? Teachers will be wary of professional reprise, so they will start engaging in self censorship. They will not touch those areas which are problematic, which will face reprisal from the establishment. Faculties are being right now evaluated on performative criterias. They are evaluated on metrics, and that will again lead to erosion of their focus on research or focus on critical areas. There is also suppression of controversial research topics. It will be disinterested due to fear. The outcome is a smoothing intellectual climate. So what will happen? Overall, the intellectual climate which comes from the critical reasoning, which comes from the spirit of inquiry, these all will be suppressed and complete intellectual environment will be smoothed. Further, it will lead to corporatization of higher education, no longer viewed as public institution dedicated to knowledge and social advancement. Then disciplines that promise immediate financial returns, they will also promoted. For example, engineering will be promoted, or those arenas which are mostly related to STEM sector will be promoted. And the author said the crisis of education has therefore at its core a crisis of imagination. If there is no imagination among the student, if there is no imagination among the scholars, what will happen? It will cause crisis of education, because the basic criteria of education is learning. But this criticism is in the context that these things are happening, but there are some things which are coming up with various new policies being promoted by government, like new education policy. It led to the focus on, its basic focus was on multidisciplinary approach, critical thinking. That was its basic agenda, basic aim of this particular new education policy was. So the article painted a very negative picture about that education system. Yes, there are some problems, but there are some silver lining also. So NEP focused on increasing gross enrollment ratio. It focused on vocational education. In India, vocational education was completely sidestepped. It was being seen as an inferior medium of education, but NEP focused on it. It also focused on internationalization of education, which will create competition among the students, among the faculties. It will create competition for R&D. Then it focused on overhauling regulatory structure, which was being seen as that it has passed out its time. Then it also focused on multidisciplinary education, not only STEM, but it said that it should be STEAM. STEAM means science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics. So A is very important. Humanities should be blended. For example, if there is artificial intelligence course is going on, it should also understand from the perspective of society, what will its impact on society. That's what arts and humanities bring. Now let us try to understand some of the features which national new higher education policy will provide, and what particular focus was on higher education. Like it was focusing on increasing gross enrollment ratio, as it was only about 27 to 29%, but the target is to increase it by 50% by 2035. It also promoted online open distance courses. So these will again increase the reach of education to masses. Besides it, restructuring of institutions which were outdated, they required restructuring as per the requirement of current scenario, like research universities, teaching universities and degree granting colleges. So it will be categorized. Research will be focused in some universities, teaching will be another. Beside it, it also aimed to transfer all higher education into multidisciplinary institutions. Then it also focused on gradual move toward academic, administrative and financial autonomy. It is not saying that they are going to completely centralize. It itself is saying that they will provide autonomy, especially in the arena of academics, administrative and financial. Beside that, new education policy has also provision of multidisciplinary. How? It will integrate arts, humanities, science, technology, and it will also provide flexible UG structure with multiple exit options. If students want, for example, for 2 years they want to read engineering, after that they want to read arts, it is okay, they can do it right now. Earlier these things were not. So it is not justified that the current regulation policies is only promoting centralization, but they are also promoting innovation, they are also promoting multidisciplinarity. For example, in 1 year, first year they can do certificate, in 2 years they can do diploma, after that third year bachelor's degree, fourth year bachelor's with research also. So these are some of the innovation. There is also promotion of academic bank of credit, which will be the bank to digitally store and transfer all the credits which is being earned by a student in the 4 year. MPhil was being discontinued because it was thought that this is not relevant for the current education system. There was also overhaul of regulatory structure. How? National Higher Education Regulatory Council was being proposed. Then National Accreditation Council for accreditation whether the colleges are proper or not. Then Higher Education Grants Council. Its purpose was only to funding. Earlier all these things were being done by UGC. Then General Education Council was also for setting up of curriculum and standards. The basic aim of this policy, National Education Policy 2020, was decentralized and eliminating conflict of interest. Earlier all these works were being done by UGC, which was centralized. So NEP is a way forward for decentralization. It is more focusing towards providing autonomy. Now it also focused on improving research environment because the R&D ecosystem and culture in India is not up to mark. India is lagging way behind its peer. India is only spending 0.69% of its GDP, but NEP wanted to increase it also. Setup of National Research Foundation was also being proposed, and which will fund and collaborate research. Then focus on internationalization. How? It will enable top Indian universities to open campuses abroad, and that will again further increase the bar, set up the standards high. It will allow also for some of the foreign universities to set up their campuses in India also. Beside it, focus on vocational education because only less than 5% of youth are engaged in this. So India wants to break that stigma or taboo related to vocational education. Target is 50% students should be exposed to this, and that's why National Committee under MHRD has been set up, and National Skills Qualification Framework has also been set up for the vocational education. Now through a practice question, let us try to understand that which type of question can be framed in the UPSC and how you should tackle it. Should the premier institutes like IITs, IIM be allowed to retain premier status, allowed more academic independence in designing courses, and also decide mode or criteria of selection of student? Discuss in light of the growing challenges. So for introduction, you can mention about any report, or you can also mention about higher education report which is being released and which shows what is the status of these institutes right now. Then in body, first you have to mention about various challenges which is happening due to more academic independence of IITs and IIM. What are the various challenges? And then in second part, you have to show whether it should be allowed or not. What is your stand? So you have to write about these things, and further you have to give a way forward because it is important that your opinion should be given, and the way forward should be balanced, that yes, these institutions require more and more autonomy especially in regarding framing of curricula, in regarding setting up standards for their students selection as well as designing courses, but they should also be regulated so that their orientation should align with whatever National Education Policy 2020 is saying. In conclusion, you can say education, you can quote Gandhiji or Martin Luther King Jr. or Rabindranath Tagore, and that will give you extra edge. So, this is how it should be discussed. If you like our content, you should share the video, you should like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.